First, it was 5 deals. Now it's 5 more. But these aren't just transactions. They're signals of a global power shift. Canada isn't just stepping away from the US, it's stepping up to something bigger. You can see it in recent moves. The Arctic Gateway project getting new funding, and a security pact with Europe that cuts out the old reliance on US suppliers. These are not random headlines. They're calculated steps. From the Arctic to Brussels, what you're about to see isn't a reaction. It's strategy. And America, it never saw it coming. Canada's next move starts where the map gets cold. Canada's Arctic edge starts with Churchill. The Port of Churchill sits where the boreal forest meets the tundra, and it's not just a dot on the map anymore. With a $175 million upgrade announced in 2025 and more than $180 million invested since 2017 to repair flood damage and overhaul infrastructure, this isn't just about fixing old tracks, it's about remaking trade routes. Churchill is Canada's only Arctic seaport, and its shipping season, once limited to roughly 3 or 4 months, is slowly getting longer as the ice retreats a bit more each year. Scientists at Churchill's Marine Observatory are tracking that window as it expands, opening new possibilities for trade. The port's history is full of political compromise. Built a century ago for prairie farmers, it languished under American ownership. Chris Avery, CEO of Arctic Gateway, puts it bluntly. These assets were neglected. Now, Churchill is Indigenous-led, with 41 Bayline communities invested through the Arctic Gateway Group. The upgrades aren't just for the port, they're for the Hudson Bay Railway too, connecting remote communities and unlocking northern supply chains. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew has gone public about looking into a second Hudson Bay port, a move aimed at boosting trade with Europe and giving Canada even more leverage in the Arctic. This isn't theory. In 2024, Churchill moved 10,000 tons of Manitoba-mined zinc concentrate, and plans are in place to double that amount in partnership with Hudbay Minerals Inc. The port's storage capacity is set to triple. There's talk of making Churchill a major export point for critical minerals, lithium, nickel, rare earth elements needed for clean energy technology. Canada's resource strategy is changing the game for everyone watching. While US lawmakers debated new policies about rare earths, Ottawa moved quickly to secure direct supply agreements with Germany. These deals are worth billions and cover more than just 1 or 2 minerals. Canadian cobalt, graphite, nickel, and lithium, materials essential for electric vehicle batteries, are now heading straight to European factories. This move didn't happen by accident. When the US imposed tariffs on Canadian goods under Trump, Canada started looking for other buyers. Now European automakers like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes are signing contracts that bypass American middlemen entirely. Europe is pushing a rapid shift to electric vehicles under the EU's Green Deal, and the demand for battery materials is exploding. Canadian reserves are well positioned to meet this need. And the agreements with Germany lock in those supply chains before the US can even react. While Washington spent years in political deadlock over mining permits, Canada approved projects in Quebec and Manitoba at record speed. Companies like Nemaska Lithium and other Quebec-based producers have already secured multi-billion-dollar deals, putting Canada ahead in the global race for lithium. But this isn't just about lithium. The same agreements cover rare earth elements used in everything from wind turbines to smartphones and military equipment. Canada ranks among the world's top suppliers of these critical minerals, all recognized by the US as essential for national security. Yet instead of selling exclusively to the US, Canada is now making direct deals with Europe. When US sanctions complicated Russian nickel imports, Europe turned to Canadian mines. The pattern is clear. When global supply chains break down, Canada becomes the first call. The Germany deals even go further, including joint ventures for battery plants in Quebec. That means Europe gets not just the raw materials, but also the factories. There's no waiting for American politics to settle. no risk of trade wars cutting off shipments. Canada has added research partnerships with German universities, something the US rarely offers to sweeten the deal. Canada's approach is straightforward. Control the minerals everyone needs, move quickly to supply the highest bidder, and do it all without waiting for US approval. The result is leverage that Washington never expected. With each new contract, Canada is proving it can set the terms of trade, not just follow them. That's a message the world is starting to hear, and as Canada's resource deals draw more attention, its next diplomatic moves are raising even more eyebrows. The global game is shifting, and the old alliances aren't as predictable as they used to be. Canada's appearance at a BRICS summit caught almost everyone off guard. It wasn't as a member or even as an official partner, just an observer. That move was intentional. Canada didn't show up to join. It showed up to send a message. When Canadian diplomats walked into that meeting, it signaled something new. Canada is willing to explore relationships outside its usual circles, and that's enough to get attention in Washington. BRICS is known as the club for countries trying to build a world beyond Western dominance: China, Russia, Brazil, and others who want to reduce the dollar's power. Canada is a founding member of NATO and the G7. It's not supposed to be in the same room, but there it was. Some US observers privately called it a provocative move, though there's no official record of outrage. The message was out there. Canada has options, and it's not afraid to show them. The numbers matter. Together, BRICS account for roughly a third of global GDP by purchasing power parity. Their new development bank has already loaned tens of billions to emerging markets, projects that used to go to the World Bank or IMF. Canada didn't sign on to anything. No money changed hands. But Canadian officials were present, taking notes, shaking hands, and making it clear that if the US keeps treating Canada as an afterthought, there are other tables to sit at. The timing wasn't accidental. The US had just threatened tariffs on Canadian-made electric vehicles. Ottawa didn't run to the WTO or plead for special treatment. Instead, Canadian officials flew to South Africa and sat down with delegates from China and India. The official US response was measured, but the attention was obvious. This isn't just about diplomatic theater. Large Canadian institutional investors have billions tied to BRICS economies. The Canada-China Business Council still counts hundreds of corporate members. While US politicians talk about decoupling, Canadian mining companies keep shipping lithium and other minerals to Chinese plants. Canada's presence at BRICS meetings is a clear sign it's open to new partnerships, even if it's not ready to join the group. Canada isn't about to sign up for BRICS membership. That's not the goal. The point is to show it can operate independently of Washington's blessing. When a Canadian official sits in on a BRICS working group about climate technology, it sends a clear message. Cooperation doesn't have to go through the US. The US noticed, and it's unsettled. But while American officials keep watch, Canada is making moves elsewhere, moves that matter for its allies and for its own future. Canada's military manufacturing deal with Europe is changing the defense landscape on both sides of the Atlantic. As the US defense industry faces backlogs and supply chain delays, Canada is stepping in to fill the gap. According to Reuters, Canadian factories are now producing armored vehicles and artillery shells for European allies through multi-million-dollar manufacturing contracts, orders that would have gone to American suppliers in the past. The urgency is real. NATO needs weapons quickly, and Canada is able to deliver. This year, Canada is boosting its defense spending from roughly 1.4% to 2% of GDP, adding an extra $9 billion to the budget, according to government announcements. Some of that money is going straight into expanding the country's military production capacity, increasing recruitment, and repairing equipment. Canadian defense plants are running at full capacity, turning out vehicles, radar systems, and munitions for NATO partners. European countries, facing delays from US suppliers, have sourced Canadian-made shells and other equipment to keep their commitments to Ukraine and to bolster their own stockpiles. But this isn't just about meeting NATO's immediate needs. Canada is in advanced talks with the European Union to join new military industry initiatives. These discussions could see Canadian factories building European systems like the Saab Gripen jet, a direct alternative to the American F-35. The EU is loosening its budget rules and proposing a €150 billion loan program to ramp up military spending and development, and Canada is positioning itself as a key partner. This isn't subcontracting, it's industrial cooperation at the highest level. The benefits flow both ways. Canada gains access to European military technology, sidestepping US export controls and opening new markets. European nations get a reliable supply chain that doesn't depend on Washington's political gridlock. Canadian workers are seeing job growth and pay raises as the government invests in new shipyards, updated radar systems, and procurement of submarines, drones, and sensors. None of these contracts require US approval. That's a major shift. The real story is in the long-term partnerships being built. Canada is negotiating to join the EU's military-industrial roster, which would make its factories permanent suppliers for European armies. When European allies needed munitions and US supplies lagged, they turned to Canada first. The relationship is changing. Ottawa is not just a junior partner anymore. These deals aren't temporary. They're part of a structural pivot, with Canada aligning itself more closely with Brussels and less dependent on US approval. The defense industry here is becoming a backbone for NATO and EU military needs, and that's a development Washington can't ignore. 10 deals, one clear direction. While Washington debates, Canada acts, signing defense pacts with the EU, supplying NATO, and locking in lithium deals. Canada's strategy is now clear: less reliance on Washington, more leverage with Europe and beyond. The Arctic Gateway investment, the EU Security and Defense Pact, and new critical mineral deals all point in the same direction. Canada is building options. Canadian plants have filled some European orders more quickly than US yards that are backlogged. The Port of Churchill is shipping minerals directly to Europe. Canadian officials at BRICS meetings show Ottawa is looking for new partners, not just following the old playbook. Which of these strategic moves, Churchill's revival, the lithium deals, or the EU Defense Pact, do you think most reshapes Canada's global role? Let us know below. Hit subscribe. This shift isn't slowing down. Canada is moving with purpose while others wait for the next headline.